Somewhere in the world right now, there's a phone that isn't allowed to go to voicemail. It sits on a nightstand or a kitchen counter next to a bag that's already packed, and when it rings, the man who answers it has somewhere between 4 and 12 hours to be wheels up. He doesn't know where. He doesn't know who's holding the hostages. He just knows the clock started the second his phone lit up. This is the story of what happens in those hours and the days that follow inside Delta Force. Not the shooting. Everyone's seen the shooting, or a movie's version of it. This is the part almost nobody talks about. How you train for a rescue you can't rehearse until you know the building. How you eat when your gut is too wired to hold food down. How you sleep, if you sleep at all, in the hours before you're supposed to make split-second decisions with someone else's life in your hands. By most accounts from operators who've written about their time in the unit, the selection process alone weeds out almost everyone who tries. It's built less to test how fast you can run and more to see what's left of you after you've been broken down for weeks. That matters, because everything that comes after, the training, the eating, the sleeping, all of it is built around a simple, brutal fact. The body they're working with was chosen specifically because it doesn't quit. Training starts long before any hostage situation exists. Delta operators spend years building what people in the unit reportedly call muscle memory under stress, drilling room clearances, hostage discrimination, and close quarters shooting so often that the movements stop being decisions and become reflex. The reasoning is simple. In a real rescue, there's no time to think through the geometry of a room. You have a second, maybe less, to tell the hostage from the hostage taker, and if you're still thinking at that point, you're already too slow. But general training only gets you so far because every hostage situation is different, and that's where the real work begins. Once a crisis breaks and intelligence starts coming in on where the hostages are being held, operators reportedly build a mock-up of the location, sometimes full scale, sometimes just taped outlines on a hangar floor, and they run it, over and over. Different entry points, different numbers of hostiles, different worst-case scenarios, until the plan stops being a plan and starts being something closer to muscle memory again, just aimed at one specific building instead of a generic one, and that's when the eating changes too. Nobody talks about food in these situations, but by most accounts from people who've trained alongside special operations units, appetite is one of the first things stress takes from you. Adrenaline shuts down digestion. Your body is preparing to fight or run, not to break down a sandwich. So operators are reportedly trained to eat on a schedule, not on hunger, because waiting until you feel hungry before an operation like this might mean you never eat at all. High calorie, easy to digest food. Nothing heavy, nothing that sits in your stomach like a rock right before you might need to move fast in body armor. Some operators have described forcing down food they didn't want, because the alternative was running on empty during the exact hours their body needed the most fuel. There's a version of this that sounds almost mundane, and that's the point. The rescue itself might last minutes. The lead-up can last days, and during those days, in a staging area somewhere close to the target but not close enough to be seen, life becomes a strange mix of intense rehearsal and forced boredom. Waiting for weather, waiting for intelligence updates, waiting for a green light that might come at 3 in the morning or might not come at all, which brings us to sleep, and this is where things get genuinely difficult, because everything about a hostage rescue works against it. The mind doesn't shut off just because the body is exhausted. From what former operators have said in interviews and memoirs, the hours before a mission are some of the hardest to actually rest during, not because there's nothing to do, but because there's too much running through your head. The layout of the building, the last known position of the hostages, whether the intelligence is even still accurate by the time you go in. Sleep, when it happens, is reportedly treated almost like another piece of equipment, something you maintain on purpose, because showing up exhausted to a room full of hostiles and hostages you have half a second to tell apart isn't just risky. It's a way to get someone killed who didn't have to die. So operators are trained, by most accounts, to take sleep in whatever form it comes. 20 minutes here, an hour there. Not the 8-hour block civilians think of when they hear the word. And there's a discipline to it that sounds almost unnatural. The ability to close your eyes in a cargo plane, or on a hangar floor, or in the back of a vehicle, and actually rest, because the body that doesn't get that rest is the body that hesitates later. And hesitation in this line of work isn't a small mistake. It's the difference between a hostage walking out and a hostage not walking out at all. There's a moment that shows up again and again in accounts from operators who've been through this. It's not the breach. It's not the shooting. It's the stretch right before, when the plan is set, the mock-up has been walked 100 times, the food's been forced down whether anyone wanted it or not, and there's nothing left to do but wait for the signal. That's reportedly the hardest part. Not the danger. The waiting through it. Wide awake. Running on fumes and forced calories. Knowing that everything you trained for is about to happen in real time, against people who don't know you're coming, in a building where every second either saves a life or ends one. When the call finally comes, none of that preparation is visible anymore. It just looks like speed, like certainty, like men who know exactly where to go and exactly what to do the moment the door comes down. But that certainty isn't instinct. It's the sleep they forced themselves to take. It's the food they made themselves eat. It's the mock-up they walked so many times the real building felt familiar before they'd ever set foot inside it. Which is maybe the most unsettling part of the whole thing, once you actually sit with it. The version of readiness that looks the most effortless on the outside is usually the one that costs the most to build. Nobody sees the hours in the staging area, or the meals forced down on a schedule instead of an appetite, or the 20 minutes of sleep grabbed on a hangar floor. They just see the outcome. And maybe that's the real question worth asking. Whether what it takes to be ready for a moment like that is something you'd actually want, even if you could have it.